of the Public Library Board of Trustees at 6:15 at the conclusion of our executive session. In attendance, we have Lee Lewis, Matthew Donahue, Jen Clackenbush, Carolyn Bromwich, Emily Curtin, head of the foundation, Debbie Grace, and library director, Don. The first item on our agenda is minutes approval. The minutes from our July meeting were sent out. You had a chance to review it. Did anyone see any changes, edits that need additions? Not seeing any, I'll take a motion to accept the minutes as printed. I move to accept the minutes for the July meeting as printed. Second that. All in favor? Aye. Great. The next item is the subcommittee update. If you remember the last time that we met, there was a hesitant volunteer group that decided to become part of the subcommittee for building improvements and projects, renovations. And we did have our first meeting. It was Donald, myself, Carolyn, and Ralph. Deb was unable to make it, but she's also on the subcommittee.
And Jess Fitzgerald will also be part of the subcommittee for the foundation.
So 2 members from the foundation as well. Donald, did you want to give the update about what occurred or?
Sure. Okay. So basically with this introductory meeting, we just, went over what the role of the subcommittee would be in the sense of, working towards, getting projects in order, sharing workloads. There was some tasks that were given out as far as the back room project. We were prioritizing, discussing a little bit about wants and needs, and, just trying to, get some ideas to, where we wanted to start with. So it was, basically left with a couple of tasks, both that Emily and myself what to do to, to try to get some basic numbers as far as the projects before actually speaking to either an architect or an engineer. So that, we can kind of, we can kind of all sit and fantasize about like, oh, this is going to be $1 million. This is going to be 500,000, and, what could be our different options and stuff. And this way we kind of would have some hard numbers. So we can say, okay, well, these are the 5 aspects of the project. This is what 2 of the 5 are, so, and, kind of work with the others and then, get the engineer. So I think that, we left the meeting with a good understanding of what the role of the committee was and what we were hoping to accomplish with it. We did not schedule another meeting, so that will be something that we will need to do.
It'll be done via email, so I'll just loop in Jess and yourself, and then we can figure out what.
And there may be another person here to make meetings.
The other thing there was I wanted to mention under the subcommittee update was anytime that we meet, no decisions will be made before we present them to the board to discuss further. There wouldn't be any decisions made that we wouldn't present here, since we're not just going rogue.
So there's like open meeting law, so that whatever that would come into play
For the
because there isn't a quorum.
There's only 3.
So that's why, yeah.
I'm not trying to be a stickler. I just want to,
Oh no, there's only 3. Then it'd be different.
I just didn't want someone else to come along and be like, "You guys are breaking the open meeting," have us all get in trouble.
The next item on the agenda is treasurer bonding update, and this is a long story. Would you like me to tell it? So our treasurer, Carolyn, is it's time for her to renew her bonding, and there was a change at the agency with our particular agent. So she didn't know who to send the renewal to. It finally found its way to the public library and to us. So now we're in the process of filling out the paperwork, but between summer vacations and the late delivery of the paperwork, we are just now catching up, but we're probably end of the week should have the information that we need.
As soon as I
bonding
get
to be
one little
completed.
bit information.
Okay.
Archives update.
Okay.
This is the exciting.
Oh, boy. Yes. So, the reason we have an archives update is recently, actually a couple of months ago, we were contacted by a former member of the Women's Alliance, which was a women's group that met at the Unitarian Church. There at the archives is a permanent loan of materials from them. So it's kind of like their meeting minutes, any type of documentation, historical things. And the correspondence we got was in regards to an item that was included in that donation, well, that loan, that was pointed out to belong to the church itself and not the women's group. And so the request was made by this individual to have the item removed from the collection and returned to the church. We were in the process of doing due diligence because that is one of the challenges with having personal loan, with having the personal loan collections, the permanent loans, is basically what has happened is the entity that donated the collection no longer exists. This individual who was part of it is no longer part of it. And there's a lot of documentation that removal of items require the signature of the president, the vice president, and the secretary. There's nobody. So, we were kind of looking into this. We then received a letter from the archivist at the Unitarian Church, informing us that that woman had contacted him, that they, were actively wanting this particular item back, and that we needed to make the arrangements to return it. So I reached out to the MBLC, the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. They have a preservation specialist, for some guidance with this. And this situation presents a lot of challenges. One is that some of the the record keeping wasn't up to par, which is evidently commonplace in many archives, in the sense of, like, all right, we'll take this from you, but we don't have the conversation of like, we'd rather that you give it to us versus you have it on permanent loan, because technically you are not going to be here forever. Your entity, whatever the business may be or what have you, will not be here. And a lot of times, people don't want to have those frank conversations. And so that's what happens. There was an example used to me for, I think it was for UConn, that they have a collection of papers that belong to a senator that had passed, and he did not sign a form which is called a gift of deed. So basically for 22 years, they have been storing this man's paperwork and can do nothing with it. And so, speaking to the contact at the MBLC, it was recommended, I asked the question, what do you think of these things? And these, permanent loans do not bode well for, the host. So basically what this means is we store it, we keep it in proper conditions, we maintain it, but you still own it. So you're basically kind of using us as a storage facility. And at any given time, you could come back and say, oh, I want my stuff back. And so the situation with this is now we're trying to do our due diligence for the ownership in the sense of transfer. People have wills that they, leave, tangible items to others. So there's, documentation to say, okay, if something happens to this group, all the items that belong to this person go to this person. Well, that's kind of where we're at with this. We have no, technically have no qualms about returning the item. It's just that I'm trying to proceed with caution due to the fact that I don't want to open up a can of worms that somebody comes in and says, hey, that so-and-so, that rocking chair that's in the collection was my grandfather's and that shouldn't have been collected. We should, we want that back. And so that, we don't want to get into that. So, we are doing our due diligence, in regards to that. But at the same time, this brings up the issue that the permanent loan collections are supposed to be reviewed after so many years. It's 5 years. The last time the Women's Alliance collection was done was, I believe it was in 2006. So we're now, we're past due to do a renewal with this. And the question is who do we do the renewal with it? So we're still, Nick is still, researching, some of the historical books about that include the history of the Women's Alliance, to see, to try to make the connections so that we can, comfortably say, okay, this belongs to the universe, the church, this, belong to the, the women's group, which basically now means that it becomes orphaned materials. And then we have to make decisions about that, whether or not we want to keep those materials. In speaking to Nick, this is a collection that would not be an issue to return it in its entirety, because that's the other thing. People don't want to say no to people who want to donate, but just because it's older stuff and older paperwork, it may not have the historical value that one would hope, for researchers in the future and stuff like that. So I'm bringing this, to your attention to, say that we are looking at this, the issue. There is in the collection, development policy for the local history collection, verbiage about that items which fall under the category of conditional gifts and permanent loans or have restrictions on them will be considered depending on their content, relevance to the history of Kingston, format and size and physical location. Now that line is, after a mention of the director and the archivist, accepting exclusions to the general policy. So we are looking at it, whether or not, that this particular collection, needs to remain, or if this is something that can be returned, and if it's going to be returned, who's it going to be returned to. So after that, we will be looking at the other permanent loan collections, to look and see, basically the paperwork, how up to date that has been, and whether or not it hasn't been, and, moving forward. With that said, as Nick outlined in his report, that we were contacted by the former Kingston Baptist Church, and there is historical documents there that they would like to have come to the archives as a gift, so there would be no permanent loan. And the hopes is that, we would take the majority of the items. There were some items that did not fit the criteria. There's a photo that I think is really cool of the sewing group that used to meet at the church, and they have the original sewing machine. They are not willing to give us the sewing machine, but they have agreed that when we do, any type of exhibit, that it would be appropriate that we could have it, on exhibit with those other materials, like the photo of the group, which was great that their photos actually on the back identified everybody, which is not a common practice from back in the day. And it is a collection that there was a lot of information. There wasn't a lot of information in the existing archives, so this will be a great supplement to it. So we're supposed to be, making the arrangements with them and getting the collection. So.
An interesting note, just to go with this bullet point on the agenda, is that the original archivist of Kingston Public Library and Donald have spoken.
Yes.
Recently.
Yes. Because her paperwork, which as an aside, the paperwork that was signed was hers and her future mother-in-law's. So that was, kind of comical.
Small town.
I know. And well, see, and that's the problem with saying no. You don't want to say no to your neighbor, sort of thing. So yeah, so we spoke to her, and there wasn't a lot of recollection of the process, but questioning the intent of the book being returned, because obviously it is an older item. It is a book of signatures, of autographs, from ministers and abolitionists during the Civil War times, and Frederick Douglass is one of them. I know there are other names, but that's the only name that, as a non-history buff.
That's the big
Okay,
one.
no.
That's the marquee.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So we're, yeah, so there's been the request for that. So we are working on that in case, anything is heard, anyone approaches you, to discuss it or what have you, that's, what we're working on.
I believe the social media policy inquiry, well, it also relates to Nick's work, right? Was it Nick's program?
It was Nick's program. So, yeah, he's a magnet for this stuff. So basically what this is a case of that we need to kind of look at is that in our social media policy, there is a mention of video recording and photography by the library for use of that content for social media marketing. And the criteria would be, if we were going to record, we would make an announcement beforehand that, hey, we're going to record this video. If folks don't want to be on a video, what have you, please sit in that corner or what have you. And what happened with one of the events that he had done was that there was an assistant to the presenter, and the assistant actually recorded the whole event. So the issue is that our policy does not have any specific language that pertains to third-party folks, because obviously, it was a topic. It was about the Jones River group and securing the cranberry bogs land. So things that could be skewed as political. Obviously, if you're sitting in the front row and you wanted to hear this discussion, you may not know that you were going to now be on YouTube somewhere as part of a campaign of some sort. So we do need to look at, writing a policy pertaining to that.
That can kind of kick off our conversation about the fact that I have to get you copies of our policies, this that you can see, and then this will likely be the first one that we overhaul as a group, or at least revisit and see if we can change some of the language to be reflective of issues that could come up in the future similar to that. I also have somewhere for you to go on the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners that will have information for you as a new trustee, so I'll send you all that this week. You can just do some light reading on our policy procedures. Anything else you wanted to add to that, or?
No.
Okay, then the next is your director's report, so.
Okay. So let's see. I already discussed the building subcommittee. I've already began working with Recreation about book and treat. So we have planned book and treat for Friday, October 25th. This has been a joint Halloween program that we've done since I've been here, where we basically take over the whole the Reed building, for this great community event. We also have talked about luminaries. My hopes is that in the near future, I will be attending a Board of Selectmen's meeting, just to kind of make a community announcement about what we would like to do, is that we've tried to do in the past is, since there were so many different groups, like different churches and businesses that do open houses and things like that for luminaries, no one knows what anyone is kind of doing. Like us in the rec department have worked together to make a flyer for ourselves. We refer to check out other community events, but there hasn't been one cohesive kind of outlet for community members. So I am going to make a plea to have folks that are involved in these different groups that do participate in luminaries to reach out to us. And we will work on making a comprehensive kind of guide, for luminaries that we can post on, the town's website, the library's website, put out on email blasts, social media and stuff like that, so that, it can really be seen as a true community group, program.
Is there a committee for the luminaries? Like we have one for the Memorial Day Parade one.
There isn't.
There isn't,
That's-
It's
there
groups
isn't.
of people
We,
that talk about it and touch base about it,
Yeah.
but there's no official. committee.
yes, the first year I was here for luminaries, it was mentioned to one of the then selectmen about having a committee. You know, and the thing too is that, you know, then things could be better, you know, in some ways planned. You know, because while we have, for example, rolling events, you know, others are actual, okay, at 6:30, we're doing this, at 7, it's this, you know, so people can kind of structure, you know, so sometimes there'll be something, you know, at the Reed Building at 6:30 that is for, you know, young children, and then at 7 there's going to be something that may be for older. So all of a sudden there's this mass exodus from the Reed Building because, you know, the next event, you know, wasn't, you know, appropriate, what have you. So yeah, so we're trying to come up with a comprehensive, you know, kind of guide, but that the committee idea has been something that, you know, came up. I did actually mention it to the town administrator recently. And, you know, he thought it was a great idea, you know, to do that, you know, to kind of have that information. At the same time, he agreed to be Santa for us for luminaries. 2 years
And
in
I
a
feel like right before luminaries, there'll be a million posts about where do I park, what streets are closed, like all of that information.
Absolutely.
In one spot.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Usually.
It's kind of piecemeal.
It is kind of a free for all.
Yeah, you know, you can, you know, like a lot of times, so the first year we had it here, I was amazed at the number of teens. And I thought, how great is that, you know, that this was a program that parents, you know, dropped off, you know, a group of teens, and this was just a single kind of, you know, walk through. You go to the Reed, you work your way up here to us, then you go to the other open houses on Main Street and what have you. So yeah, so that is to have something like that, I think would be a benefit, you know, to the community. Let's see. So as far as facilities things, the automatic door buttons have been installed on those doors, which we just got the bill for the for the electrician for that. That was part of that bill was something that we absorbed as the Sampson Fund. You know, the request was only for the actual work itself on the doors. Some of the carpeting has been redone outside of the public restrooms due to, you know, paint stains and other things. We are working with facilities because these tiles are really not, they're kind of magnets to dirt. So in the sense of, like, if you look in the children's room where story time is, you will notice that it looks like a giant dark black blob. So we're working with them to try to come up with scheduling for shampooing.
Speaking from experience.
Yeah.
Having time these.
Yeah. But if you go in children's and other areas, you'll see that there, you know, there are some places that you're like, okay, I know no one is walking along the, you know, the windows for the courtyard. I know they're not balancing right there. So how is it getting, you know, that dark staining and stuff? So, so we're working with them to find out about, you know, getting regular shampooing and
Is it-
stuff.
Concrete.
So if they're sitting, is it coming up from the pressure of them sitting on in like a circle or in a space?
Like
I-
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
We're just on concrete. There's no.
Right.
like,
Yeah.
subfloor.
That would make sense. Right.
Let's see. So I met with the library department heads to discuss upcoming programming, as well as to recap with summer reading. As of Friday, summer reading is over. I don't have the final numbers yet, you know, for programs, attendance, et cetera. That will be on, you know, next month's, you know, reports. It was a very busy summer. And there definitely was, you know, with the adult summer reading, there was a lot of interest with the summer reading prize, which was that sustainable and gardening, kind of basket. And, I did see that we did have a lot of interest from non-residents, which was actually one of the things when I looked at the statistics, the annual statistics, is that our circulation is actually, our non-resident circulation is about 30%. So about a third of our usage is actually by non-residents. So I'm going to, at the next directors meeting, I'm going to ask a group of directors to meet and go over our statistics to see kind of how we all fare, in the sense of, we are higher up on our, library card numbers, but not even, like, I think it's like 9% is for children. So, how does, Plymouth, for example, what is their percentage rate, or Duxbury's, what have you, and try to do a comparison to see, where we've kind of fallen, in the curve of things.
This is a curious question. When you say non-resident circulation, does that include people who, like, I guess, place folds to pick up at their home libraries, or is that just people who walk into here and check out with a gift card?
It is a combination.
Okay.
It is a combination. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, that would be for our overall circulation for last year for physical stuff, that would be like visits for 40-something thousand items. So yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we do get a lot. We do get a lot. As part of the purchasing for last year's budget, we did get a new collection of adult launch pads, which primarily have focused on a lot of games, a lot of mind things such as crosswords and things like that. Those are going to be promoted to the Council on Aging. Next month is National Library Card Sign Up Month. I am in the works with the Council on Aging to do other site visits as I've done in the past, promoting services. And one of the things that was also purchased was items for a kind of like a dementia kit. So like kind of busy kind of activity things like an apron with different kind of tasks that would help folks and stuff. And those were primarily the main things. Did anyone have any questions on that? Okay.
Staff reports were also sent out along with the director's report. Would anyone have any questions or comment from the staff reports? Not seeing any. Oh, it's foundation. Would you expect the foundation?
We have 4 new members on the board, which is fabulous. We have, that's about it for us. We have actually, I take that back. We are celebrating actually the 15th anniversary of the foundation being founded in November. So it would be after tonight's meeting, I will be coming to the trustees to ask for permission about an event. Details to be determined.
I think it's yours. Thank you. Payment of bills, we already discussed that once the paperwork for the treasurer bonding is official, then we will need to make the payment. Not something we need to sign tonight. Next up is old business.
I did have some old business I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if I necessarily want us to formally reconsider it. I'm curious if what other people think. But when we were talking about the calendar last time, I was processing very slowly, and also trying to go through my Google Calendar and kind of look at the specific days. And so if my understanding is correct, at least in recent history, the library has been closed on the Saturdays of specific 3-day weekends, and we reconsidered that because those may also be Saturdays when many members of the community would want to come to the library. And that all made sense to me. But when I finally got to the 4th of July one, I realized that that would mean both for our librarians and for the chances of community usage that I think we'd be closed on Friday the 4th and then open again on Saturday the 5th. And then closed on Sunday the 6th. And it almost seemed like But like, if we're, especially where we're collecting data on those other 3 days, if we discover in this fiscal year that those are highly trafficked usage, then perhaps in another year it would be different. But it felt like, especially where this is a little bit of a dry run year, that by giving the librarians that Saturday off and giving them that long weekend, it may make sense. And it felt like, because of where the Sunday we'd be closed anyways, and the Friday we'd be closed, like, it didn't feel like, if I was gonna guess, it seemed like that would also be a low community usage time frame. And so I just wanted to throw that out there, because I didn't notice it until way after we had already discussed and, you know, unanimously voted to kind of do all of the open on all of those Saturdays. But that Saturday, once I looked at the calendar, seemed like it was logically a little different than the other pattern.
So that is the outlier, because the others were a
Monday.
Sunday, Monday close, requesting Saturday for a Saturday, Sunday, Monday. This one is requesting Saturday between a Friday and a Sunday.
No.
So is there anything you want to, is there any more information?
Like, I'm not sure if I was
for
totally
that?
understanding it, because I was processing it, like I said, after the conversation had already ended. Yeah, but I was, yeah. It was a little-
So exactly as she said, that is, the situation. Some of the challenges with it is, it is a situation where we have staff. We'll have, basically, if we were to close the Saturday, that there would be some staff that would be getting 2 paid days off versus 1. It is also something that town management was getting away from, in the sense of like giving additional outside bargaining agreements, because it brought up other issues. So we just kind of follow suit, with that. I mean, my, opinion still remains that, we're service employees, we're here, for the community, and as much as we can be open, to be open.
And if I'm remembering correctly, if you were to be closed on the Saturday, the folks who were supposed to work on the Saturday somehow make up those hours traditionally. Like, when it was the Saturday, they traditionally made them up.
They had
on
to use their
Friday or
own time and
something.
stuff like that, which is a conflict, because we're basically forcing them to use their own time, which we should be giving the this person like free time. So if we decide to close on Saturday, this one person would have to use time, whether it's a personal day or vacation day, or they would have to, shift a schedule and
And pick up hours earlier in the
yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, when I picked up on it after the fact, it just seemed like, I mean, I feel like libraries typically been closed on those Saturdays. That for this year, where we don't have data on the community usage, would it make sense to at least allow for that Saturday to be a day off for the librarians, so that it's not that kind of topsy-turvy, open, close, open. And they can fully celebrate the 4th, which is traditionally like a nighttime thing, into the 5th. I mean, if I was gonna be a betting woman, I would say that Saturday is probably not gonna be a major library day. I don't know.
So we can reopen it for discussion. Specifically, if you want to talk about that date, because
Right.
the opinion hasn't changed on the dates where it's
No.
that month, okay,
Not at all.
Sunday, Monday, so this would be specifically to discuss the 4th of July, which is obviously going to move all the time before this year, because the other part, the
Right.
discussion that you referenced was, we said we should collect data about foot traffic, so that when we make decisions for the upcoming year, we
Right.
have something to
Right.
look at or to reference to see what's been going on.
Actually, I do want to add one other thing, which I forgot to mention, is so the ARIS has been completed, which is a state report that we have to, provide the state all the data of the, the usage, how many items we hold. And one of the items is actually the number of hours that were open to the public. So there is a minimum for that. So that, I mean, it would technically reduce us by 7 hours. Is another point.
And this is where I wish that they would have a separate set of negotiations
Yeah.
for the non-traditional employee, but they don't, so then it's back. So we can vote to discuss it again, if you want to make a motion to open discussion of this again officially, so that we could vote again, or if you just wanted to put it out there as a thing.
I was just sort of curious of other, I mean, I don't wanna take time to sort of go through a formality if it doesn't change anyone else's thinking. It just, when I looked at that moment in the calendar, I thought to myself, that was different than what I was kind of thinking of, so I don't know if other people feel the same way.
It is a bummer.
Yeah,
More than anything, it just stinks,
Yeah.
right? But I mean, but then you have to look at like people who work retail still have to go in
Right.
on the 5th and like, I mean. I don't,
yeah,
if it's gonna be more of a pain in the butt because of all the, shifting of that and all the hours, and I say to keep as is, the original, and then take the, track how many people are coming in for the next year, but I don't know.
Yeah.
If it's gonna be worth the trouble. Yes.
right.
And that,
That's what I'm looking
and
at.
that actually brings up the question, as to, because it is subjective. So
Right.
if we're open a full day, how many patrons have to come in the library and use our services to make it worth it for us to be open?
I guess I would look at all of the Saturdays in the year and then look at those 3 Saturdays to
Yeah.
see if
Yeah.
there was a
What the
significant,
drop off.
right, see if there was a significant
Yeah.
decline.
And I mean, if it's a rainy Saturday,
Mhm.
there'll be more people.
Right.
That's,
Yeah. And
it
when
is
it's a
addictive.
holiday, I feel like
Yeah.
that's also where our data will be bizarre, because the next year.
Right.
Or
It
will
won't be a
be
problem.
that day Saturday.
Yeah.
And so then we'll be closed Saturday and Sunday won't matter, and it won't, it will come back to haunt us again.
That's what I'm saying, I don't even know if it's worth the trouble, like, if the next year it will be a different
Mhm.
situation.
Constructive for future.
Yeah.
On Saturday, for example, I'm just making this up, I don't like spend my whole day with the calendar, nothing, but it's like Christmas or New Year's or some other movable
Mhm.
holiday falls on a Saturday. Whatever information we glean from this could be instructive 2, 3, 4 years down the line when, gaming on something like that as well. So.
And then hopefully, before it gets to that, we'll have a different group that looks at their schedules
Right.
at a town level.
If we don't,
If we know, and we are indeed still here, figuring this out.
Mhm.
So do you want to make a motion?
No,
You
it
would-
seems like
okay.
everyone else kind of knew. I was just slow on catching up with it, and so I wasn't sure if other people were kind of in the same position where when we were all voting on it, I hadn't quite realized what it all was.
And it is a different scenario. It's not exactly the same, but they were requested lumped together as a group, so we just voted them.
Thank you.
Anything else under old business? Under new business? Not seeing anything. I will, I suppose we should just confirm our next meeting is going to be September 16th. And did we plan for October too? We can move forward and look at October. 14th is the day is Columbus Day. So the 21st. And Jane McCarty will be here at our second. Oh, yes, we have a speaker at the September meeting, which will be great because she will give us an update on the trustee funds. So any questions we have moving forward about allocation of those funds, potential usage, this will be helpful to know how to actualize that. Thank you. Okay. Perfect. And I'll take a motion to adjourn. So inclined. To adjourn. 6:55.
So
All in favor? Aye.